There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much for joining into this brand new interview. This was a surprise to say the least. You may have seen him on AEW Dark last week as a part of a 6-man tag team match against Jurassic Express. He did actually do a freestyle on Jurassic Express, which I'll talk about in a minute. He is making his in-ring debut, singles in-ring debut for AEW in AEW Dark against the chairman, Shawn Spears. Of course, you have to watch out for that right hand that he has, of course, which is going to air on Tuesday on AEW Dark. Ladies and gentlemen, I have with me today Platinum Max Caster. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, by the time we're recording this, it's a Sunday, but I'm releasing this on a Monday, so we could hype up your one-on-one match against Shawn Spears. But before we do, I always like to give a spitball or fireball question really quick. So, since you are friends with the Shook crew, which consists of Bryce Donovan and Bobby Orlando, and Bobby Orlando is very famous with his, I believe it's a goat.
Yes. Yep.
How do you feel about having a goat as a part of your faction?
So Bobby Jr. is the goat, and Bobby Jr. many times becomes the most popular member of Shook crew. So I've dealt with that emotionally so many times where I'm in the ring getting hurt and working my butt off, and then when fans come up to us at the merch table, they're like, "Can I pet the goat?" And I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, sure. Here you go." And so they want pictures with the goat, and we're in the background too, like peeking over the top, but he's more popular than us, so it's cool.
Hey, that's no worries at all. I mean, obviously, you guys have that fan reception, especially over in the east side or East Coast area of the United States. So I want to talk about your beginnings. What inspired you to become a professional wrestler? And was it something that you were like, man, I'm 8 or 10 years old and I want to become a professional wrestler for the rest of my life? Or was it something more of a recent kind of thing?
I'm gonna say it's in between, because all my life I had watched wrestling, and obviously when you're a kid, what you see on TV you want to do, and so I've always thought like, oh, I want to be a wrestler when I grow up. But then you fall out of wrestling and you come back at certain times, and it wasn't until a few years after college that I started training. So it was something I was looking into because like you, I worked in broadcasting, and I was working at Sirius XM, and at the time they weren't using me that much. There weren't a lot of shifts, and so I was like, man, what else can I do? And I really just like wrestling. I've been a good natural athlete my whole life. I played sports in high school, not that great, but still I did it. And so I checked out a few schools and I looked around and nothing really stood out. And then one of my friends who is a wrestler in New Jersey hit me up, and he's like, hey, Kurt Hawkins and Pat Buck, they're opening a school about 25 minutes from your house. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. And I said, you know what? Like, this is the best opportunity. I got a WWE guy current at the time, and Pat, who I've seen his shows in New Jersey, I've seen all his students wrestle, and I was just like, okay, I have to do it. So right then and there, I put down a year of tuition, which was $2,500, and I put my faith in them. I put my faith in myself, and I said, I'll give it a year. I'm not going to waste any of my money. I hate wasting money. So I just went full into it for a year, and then I just never stopped. So
that's awesome. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned before, it's just a passion that kind of grew over and over time, especially with your background in broadcasting. Can you also talk about some of the stuff that you have done in the outside of, it's a combination of, inside the professional wrestling business, but using your broadcasting. Can in mix with that. Like, for example, you had done the theme song for Beyond Wrestling, which I thought that was absolutely cool, especially looking up more information about that stuff. Can you talk to us about how that came about and what was your first thought process?
Yeah. So I will start by saying this. Being a professional wrestler now has very little to do with actual wrestling. So you can be the greatest technical wrestler of all time, but if you can't market yourself and you have no other skills to give to wrestling, you're pretty much screwed. So saying that, I have a skill set that I bring into wrestling. Broadcasting, I was big into radio. I'm not a TV guy or a writing guy. I'm just a radio guy. So I know how to speak and I know how to leave gaps and fill gaps. And when you start talking for wrestling, a lot of people aren't used to speaking in that way and in public. And I was very used to that. I'm very used to going off the top of my head and rolling with the punches. And so that's helped me on the microphone, just speaking as a wrestler. Aside from that, broadcasting helped me learn how to edit audio. And so it's something that I'm heavily involved with. Through that, I taught myself how to make music and rap music, and I record, I write, I mix it myself. I post it myself. I don't have a team. I do it all. So it's really helped me going into wrestling. And I tell whoever signs up, I'm like, guys, if you can edit a video, if you can graphic design, let us know, because we can hook you up with the right people, or we could use your help here. And it helps people get an actual foot in the door. So anybody who has an extra skill, they're a leg up in wrestling. And so I've been doing theme songs for certain people for a little bit, just kind of on the side. And I've done like the Shook Crew songs. I do all those. I did Bobby Orlando's theme song. And Beyond just hit me up one day and they were like, hey, we're doing this Beyond Championship Wrestling show, and we use this song for our normal shows, but this is kind of a different show. And can you do a remix to this? And I said, okay, yeah, great. And he sent me the song, and I just chopped it up and was like, well, this feels like some 2000s rap rock stuff, so let me try some of that. And yeah, I love being versatile. I do a lot of hip hop, and I can't really sing, but I do like trying out new genres. So it's like where I could fit it in. I'm like, oh, some rap rock from 2000. Yeah, this is what Beyond is getting, and they loved it. And luckily, I was there in the building when I heard them play it, and that was really cool. So real helpful knowing how to do things in wrestling. So that's kind of what I do.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, obviously we've seen that as well with your Instagram presence as well. You do these stuff called freestyles, which you do on Instagram. I mean, especially when you made your AEW Dark debut in the last AEW Dark prior to this recording. And and what was cool about it was that you got to really express and hype up the match itself. I mean, obviously you had the tag team partners of Dr. Luther and El Saprinto. I'm hoping I'm saying that right.
No, Serpentico.
Dang it. Man, I'm already doing horrible at this. I'm just kidding. So, and then, your freestyles, and not only just of that, but all your freestyles in general have such a unique feel to each and every one of them. So can you talk about, kind of what inspired you to do those freestyles? And not only that, was there any inspiration to doing freestyles in general?
So it kind of goes back to how you promote yourself in wrestling. So for a while, I was not Platinum Max. I was the tweener, and the tweener was so many different things that there was no way to promote it. And I'd gone through ideas, and nothing worked, and nothing ever really happened. And so I switched to Platinum Max about a year ago today, and that was kind of just a natural move. It's like, well, what can I do? I can rap. I can rap better than any wrestler there is. So let me film it. Let me just write something. And the first one that I did, I wrote, and I had it for about 3 weeks, and I was like, this is stupid. I don't know. And I finally just did it, and I posted it, and then the response was really good. And then it was kind of a huge rib on myself, because now every single Friday I have to do this video with a new rap, new lyrics, new beat, and it's a labor of love, but it's a labor for sure. And at a certain point, it was me just like, can I spit the hottest bars I can? Then after that, it turned into more of like a diary for what I was feeling at the time. And a lot of those I wrote on Friday, like during the day on Friday, like wake up, how do I feel? Good, bad, sad, tired, feeling myself, feeling not myself. And it kind of speaks to what was happening at the time, speaking on wrestling culture, stuff like that. And so now as it's gotten more popular, I've been able to use it more to promote matches and use in conjunction with what I am doing in wrestling. So it's kind of all come together and worked to kind of lift itself up. So wrestling, rapping, it's all one thing. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's absolutely cool. And like I mentioned before, just the way that you are able to just configure all these elements into one freestyle is absolutely amazing. And now, you know, it's cool, especially nowadays time. You really don't see that a lot with people trying to conjuncture and kind of put together something as creative as Freestyle Fridays, you know, in terms of current events, you know, whatever the person feels that day, or it's, you know, a match is coming up where you're facing off against Luchasaurus, Marco Stunt, and Jungle Boy, and then you're calling Jungle Boy's hair the certain way, and then you're saying Luchasaurus is, I want to say this correctly, is a 6 foot or a 6 foot nobody, or something of those terms. So it's lyrics like that make me laugh.
Yeah, so that freestyle, I'll give credit. One of the guys from New York who's also with AEW, John Silver, just hit me up randomly. He goes, "You got to do a freestyle for this match." And I thought about it. I was like, "It's such a good idea. Why didn't I think of that?" And I did it, and it came out, and everybody was really psyched on it, and it promoted this match that I think I didn't go back and watch it, but I think it was the last match on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And like who's thinking I have to see this random match, the last match of the show. I'm gonna sit down and watch the entire AEW Dark for this one match, because every other guy who's coming in there and getting these tryout matches, no one's really promoting it. Everyone says, hey, cool picture in front of the AEW step and repeat. Hey, I'm so happy for the opportunity. And that's good, but everybody can do that. Nobody could do what I do. So I had to do that. And so I got another one coming out about Shawn Spears, and I have to go in a lot harder than I did on the last one. I thought I was pretty nice to Jurassic Express, but like Shawn Spears, like the plan is to make him feel my wrath. So we'll see how he feels about that, and how AEW feels about that. But you know, it was cool, like to just, you know, when I got there before the Shawn Spears match, people were saying, hey, great freestyle, great job on that. Everyone all the way up to the top. So I'm like, great. So I did something right.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I love that the self-promotion and taking the opportunity to not just say, you know what, I'm in this match, whatever. You're taking the time to promote yourself, promote your partners, promote the product. And that's something that I really respect, especially coming from an aspiring broadcaster myself, doing stuff like that. Before we get into the match that we're all here for, which is Platinum Max Caster versus the Cherubim Shawn Spears, which airs tomorrow as of this recording on AEW Dark on YouTube, I do want to talk about the one thing that people may or may not know, and you were a part of a faction called Shook Crew, which included the members of Bryce Donovan, Bobby Jr., and of course, Bobby Orlando. Can you talk about what started the idea for Shook Crew? And I have an extra question, but I'm going to save it for later.
Okay, yeah. So this is another random story, just fate. There's a show on YouTube called Grimm's Toy Show,
Yes.
and he's based out of New Jersey. Shook Crew were based out of New York, and we had been going down there a little bit to just kind of get a little bit of exposure and do something fun on weekends we're not booked. And we got a car together, and it was me, Bryce, and Bobby. And Bobby didn't even have a match at that point. He hadn't had his debut match, and Bryce was he had a character that he had in mind, and it wasn't really going anywhere. And I was the tweener. I'm not really going anywhere. And then Grimm was just like, you know what? We need you guys to team up today. And I was just like, all right, we'll figure that out. And from there, that match kind of blew up within the Grimm kids, we call them, the Grimm fans. So they started posting about that, and we had taken a picture of us all before the match, just like, mugging for the camera. And Bryce posted it up, and he wrote "Be Shook." And Bryce always says that if he never wrote that, we had never been called the Shook Crew. He could have said "Be afraid" or "Be scared" or "Watch out," and we could have been called something totally different. So when he wrote "Be Shook," my first thought for some reason was Mobb Deep and Shook Ones, and keep the Shook Crews running. I was just like, Shook Crew, we're the Shook Crew. And that's just where it happened. And they were okay with that. Bobby doesn't know a thing about hip hop, and Bryce just rolled with it, and then it stuck. And we did the shirts, and the shirts sold, and we did another shirt, and that sold, and like we did songs. Like the first song that we did was really what cemented us as the Shook Crew, because again, it was something that someone suggested. I don't know who. Maybe it was me, or someone said, like, we should do a music video to diss Grimm and send it to him. He'll put it on the show, and we'll build up the match. And we did that, and I don't know, it's got, like, at this point it's not a lot, but like 30,000 or 40,000 views on YouTube. And that's not bad, just for some dudes who did a real specific song for a real specific thing. And I don't know what about that song really excited people, but it was like a moment, and the moment lives on forever on YouTube. So if you search Shook Crew, it's usually the first thing that comes up.
And what I do have to mention about Shook Crew is the very, very interesting but very entertaining rivalry with the Shook Crew and the gimmick infringement officers themselves, the Boulevard Bullies. And what I loved about that was, and if I could say this really quick, is I believe it was Pat or it was Mike of the Boulevard Bullies, who I believe it was in attendance to a CZW show, or it was somewhere in between those lines. And first thing was this whole video series of trying to get back their gimmick, and that the Shook Crew took the Boulevard Bullies' gimmick and name, and they just put a little spin on it, and now they're huge wrestlers. So can you talk about that kind of interaction that you had with the Boulevard Bullies? And not only that, was it something that you expected?
No, not at all. That was a total surprise to me, and it wasn't a good interaction either. So I don't know how the other guys feel, how Bryce and Bobby feel, but like Boulevard Bullies, after that I've never got along with them. So yeah, it's weird when, like I just explained to you, something so organic happened, and then you have somebody running up to you and saying, "Oh, you stole this from us." So like, we honestly don't know who you guys are. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth of it. And so it felt like guys who were trying to use whatever buzz we were generating at that point to kind of up themselves a little bit, and we didn't appreciate that. Like, they showed up, we ran a show, the poster is actually up here, the Shook Crew Fun Fair.
Yeah.
And like these guys, and we packed out the place, and there were no seats left. And these guys like came in at the end. They're like walking around all tough, like, "Oh, we walked in without a ticket. What are you gonna do?" And I'm just like, "Why are you bothering me? Why are you hanging out trying to disrupt this show?" And the show was already like a disaster from a New York State Athletic Commission standpoint, as we broke the ring in the first half of the show. So and the show went on. It was great. A great show. But that being said, it's just like, why do that? So they were a thorn in our side. And then at some point at a show, Shane, the promoter of NYWC, got me and one of the guys, I don't know which one is which, together, and he like made us pose for a picture. And I was just like, all right, so if this squashes it, this will squash it. But I'm like, still not cool. So, I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm not friends with those guys. I don't like laugh about it now with those guys. It's just like, you were just being jerks to us. That's okay. It happens sometimes. We've all moved past it.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, it was something out of the blue that had happened. But I mean, other than viewpoints on each other, I thought that was absolutely one of the most entertaining YouTube rivalries, especially on a whole gimmick infringement standpoint. But it's a very interesting to hear about the Shook Crew Fair and having the ring break in the very first match. I mean, that had to be at least some sort of like, okay, well, this happened, but we can move on from this.
Yeah. So the story on that is Shook Crew Fun Fair was a show curated by the Shook Crew. We had made all the matches, and we brought in a couple of people from outside, and Bryce and I were just on commentary. We said, we're not going to wrestle. We have this whole show to run. Let's just do commentary. Nothing bad can happen when we're on commentary, right? And so, and Bobby is sitting to my left. And so the match is Grimm versus DJ Hyde. And the very first thing of the match, DJ picks up Grimm and throws him into something was in the corner, maybe a door or something. And Grimm, being a big man, and DJ being a very big man, the force and the weight crash through the door. His weight goes down onto the bottom turnbuckle, and the rope pulls apart. Mm-hmm. It breaks. And so now we have no bottom rope with an athletic commissioner who's walking around looking for problems. So that happens. Very bad. I turn to my left. I say, Bobby, go get Pat. So Pat Buck, one of the owners and trainers, he's in the office. He's just hanging out. I go get Pat. And I go back to commentary, and then I look to my left again, and Bobby is still sitting there. I'm like, go get Pat, seriously. And he goes, oh, you're serious. And he runs and he gets Pat, and the athletic commissioner was not very happy. Luckily, he allowed us to finish the show, but that was a very, very scary moment. Just like, wow, we have this big crowd, capacity crowd, standing room only, and this show is about to die very, very early. This is not good. Plus we had like the petting zoo we rented and carnival games, and we built this whole day's worth of activities, and it was about to just end on a bad note. But luckily we got to finish it off.
Yeah, that's like I mentioned before. Everything happens for a reason, and in an event like that, I'm glad that everything had worked out despite the bottom rope breaking. So before we get into the main question, which is revolving around your match against Shawn Spears, I do want to talk about your nickname, which is very, very unique, and I would even go as far as say iconic for the professional wrestling scene, Platinum Max Caster. Where did that nickname originate from, and was it inspired by anybody?
Yes. So like I mentioned before, I used to be the tweener, and while I was the tweener, I was doing diss tracks, and I was doing the rap thing, and I was like, well, I have to kind of hone all these things that I am into one thing. And what's the thing that people love the most is the music. So I'm like, okay, I have to be a rapper. I have to present myself as a rapper, because wrestling and wrestling fans require wrestlers to kind of present themselves very succinctly. And so the tweener, there's a lot of answers. There's a lot of questions to that. And I didn't even know the real answers. It was a different answer every day. So Platinum Max, what's the character? I'm a rapper. Okay, great. What do? I rap and I wrestle. I'm also the best rapper and the best wrestler. And it just kind of worked out that way. So one day, it was about a year ago in the summer of 2019, that I was sitting at Create Pro, and I was sitting with MJF, very good friend, very mean guy, and I was like, man, like, I need a name. Like, I want to switch. I know what I need to do, but I need a name. And he goes, what about like Platinum Max? What about like, or the Hitmaker? And I don't know if he realized this or he said it subconsciously, but the Hitmaker Platinum, the moniker, was my trainer Pat Buck's nickname when he was in Ohio Valley Wrestling.
Oh,
so
wow.
You can look up Platinum Pat Buck, and the announcer announces him the same way. The Hitmaker Platinum Pat Buck. So I was like, wow, that is actually really cool. So I could be the Hitmaker Platinum Max caster. And the first match that I did it in, at Create Pro, we had a 6-way scramble match for the Create Pro title. And Pat was the champion. And I was like, wow, I have to do something a little bit different because Pat's the champ and I want to get into his head. And so I put on a silver jacket. I had a microphone, a chromed out microphone. And as the announcer's announcing me, Pat's over to my left side in the corner, and he hears it, the Hitmaker, Platinum Max Caster, and he just looks at me. And Pat, if you know Pat, he's stone-faced, very, very hard-nosed guy. He just smiles and shakes his head at me, and I'm like, wow, that either means he's honored or he's gonna beat me up in a few seconds. So I hope he's honored, and and him and Brian have been very supportive of me all the time, and ever since I've switched to Platinum, things have really just shot up, and it's been a huge change. So it's a tribute to my trainer, Platinum Pat Buck. So I'm Platinum Max Caster, and I think and thank you for saying it is iconic, because it rolls off the tongue so nicely, doesn't it? Platinum Max. I don't even need the caster. Platinum Max. This works.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, when it comes rolling off the tongue, you know, certain nicknames like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, or you're talking about like the eighth wonder of the world, Andre the Giant, or, you know, there's certain nicknames that roll off the tongue. There's certain that are not, you know what I mean? There's some that are like, oh, well, why would you put your nickname as a last name? Or why would you do this? Why would you do that? I mean, obviously, you know, it just comes off the tongue. And that's what I love about Platinum Max Cast, or even just Platinum Max, as you mentioned before. So I think that's absolutely wonderful what you're doing right now, what you did in the independent wrestling scene, and of course, what you're doing now in AEW.
Yeah. So luckily, AEW doesn't change what people are when they walk in the door, for the most part. I know Pineapple Pete. I met him. Great guy. But he is Shug D, but he's also Pineapple Pete, which great, like, great guy. And people love Pineapple Pete. People love Shug D. People would have loved whatever I would have been if they wanted to change my name, but luckily now I have a couple matches under my belt where I'm Platinum Max, and I think I've done a really good job of standing out compared to everybody else they bring in for tryout matches. And yeah, it's definitely a great leg up in AEW, because it is something that, why would you change? I'm already the best at rapping. I'm the best rapper who wrestles. I'm the best wrestler who raps. And there's nothing anybody could do. They could try, and they can parody me, or I some people have tried to do diss tracks on me, and they've been okay, but it's just like no one's gonna do what I do. So I hope they continue to see that, and I hope that I'm allowed to continue to be myself wherever I go. And I think Platinum Max, like you said, it's iconic. Why change it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I get into the last question, thank you, Max, once again for being a part of this interview and getting to get that conversation going about your career and getting again, and I'll say it again, an iconic nickname like Platinum Max Caster and all the beginnings throughout New Jersey. Like I mentioned before, I've been watching your career ever since I want to say a year or two ago when you were starting up with Shook Crew, all the diss tracks, all the all the Bobby Orlando Jr. appearances and just to see you grow and be in AEW, I mean, it's absolutely crazy to say the least. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. And any broadcasting or journalism student that wants to do an interview, I empathize with you, and I will always say yes. So if you ever want to interview me, just lead with that.
Awesome. All right. So the final question, which obviously everybody's here to do. Hopefully they're not going to skip from 1 or 0 to all the way to 31.5 for this interview. But once again, tomorrow on AEW Dark, you are having your first singles competition in-ring debut against the chairman, Shawn Spears. How important is this match for your career?
Really important. I now know, like I mentioned before, I went a little bit light on Jurassic Express with the diss track. Shawn Spears, he needs to feel the pain. And I want him to be angry starting this match. Like that's my goal when I wrestle people. I want them to be a little bit off center. I want them to be a little bit upset. And whether or not that leads to them beating me up or them making a mistake, I affected them. So that's my goal here, is to go into this match having affected Shawn Spears by throwing out a diss track that, like, what can you say? No one can respond to it. You can get on the mic and say the meanest thing about me, but it's not going to be as effective as a diss track. 1 minute, 2 minutes long, maybe even 3 minutes long. Who knows? It's a really important match for me. And I was really, really honored when I heard that was the match that I'm doing, because like sometimes like you saw in the week prior, you get put into odd situations, and I'm teaming with Luther and Serpentico, two guys that have chemistry, and here I come, a guy who's totally opposite. I'm up. I'm bubbly. I want to rap. I want to just like move around in the music. And these guys are spooky guys. I'm just like, wow. Okay. So this is going to be a weird day at the office. Now I know I can do what I know how to do, and I can do it on my own terms. And when people see how great it is and how great that I am, and I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I do consider myself a great wrestler. I think they'll be really impressed, and hopefully going forward, I'll get more opportunities like that and more chances to drop some diss tracks on people, because that's really what I want to do. I want to win matches. I want to diss people, and as long as I can do those things, I'll be happy.
That's awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much, Max, for joining in. Every social media that he has will be in the description below. And make sure you guys tune in to his match against Shawn Spears at AEW Dark tomorrow. And this is going to be one of the most interesting and biggest matches I guess I've ever seen on AEW Dark. And that's saying a lot since its beginning over in October, I believe. So this is awesome. Thank you so much once again. Is there anything that you want to plug? The spotlight is yours, my friend.
No. Social media was a mistake. I would like to say that to everybody right now. You can follow me if you want. You could see what I do. I rap a lot, and that's about it. So if you're into me rapping, which is really good, I would go follow Max Caster at Caster Show, on Twitter and Instagram. Other than that, and SoundCloud. And other than that, Shook Crew, we're on YouTube. We're on all the social medias as well. You can follow that. So we're going to do something at some point. So, and then wrestling's coming back, guys. Wrestling is coming back. So just as a general statement, when independent wrestling comes back to your town, go support it. Go see your favorite wrestlers, buy a t-shirt, and go have fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I will see you guys again soon. Boom. That was a horrible ending.